All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about why meditation is a key practice for your manifestations. And I want to open up this video by saying, did you know that by meditating, this practice could lead you to your first 6 figures or even 7 figures in your business? When we talk about meditation, we're not just talking about what only spiritual people do, because there are people who don't identify as being spiritual and they meditate. They do the practice because they experience the benefits of meditation, which is what I will highlight in this video. And meditation plays a significant role in manifesting really effectively. So we're talking about with less effort and with less time. So let's look at what meditation is. If you look up the definition of meditation, it describes meditation as a focused discourse or a conversation on a particular subject. So you're looking at focus. You're looking at a mental focus on something with intensity and having a dialogue on it. Isn't that a very interesting thing to really understand about meditation, right? Because we tend to think of meditation as we're trying to eradicate all thoughts and just empty the mind, but it's actually the exact opposite. This is really what happens with meditation. You're focusing on a particular subject and you're having like an internal dialogue about it. And there are different ways to meditate as well. So what do you think about when you hear the word meditation? You may think about just sitting with your eyes closed, with your legs crossed for a particular period of time. But the truth is, you can meditate by just looking at a painting, for example, or a piece of art. Why? Because as you're focusing on the piece of art, on that painting, or maybe it's like a sculpture, you're having an internal dialogue about the piece of art. Like you may be asking yourself, what does this mean? Or what is this piece of art making me feel? What do I feel looking at this? What is this communicating to me? So you're really focused on that painting or that sculpture, and you're having a dialogue about the painting, the sculpture. Therefore, you are meditating on that painting and the sculpture. Another example of meditation is like my husband. He feels like he's in a meditative state when he plays the guitar. That's his form of meditation. Or when he's rolling in jiu-jitsu, right? So martial arts can also be another form of meditation for a person. I remember when a friend of mine once said and referred to exercise as very much into physical fitness, and he called exercise as body meditation, right? So another example of meditation could be just walking in nature or just being very, very present with nature. I have led my clients through a type of meditative practice where they will hold an object in their hand and they will just focus on that object with all 5 senses for like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. You'll be amazed at what happens when you just note with great focus on what you're seeing, what you're feeling, what you're smelling, even what you're tasting, right? What you're hearing with this particular object. It's a very amazing exercise to do. So being very present and mindful is a form of meditation. And it comes to a point where when this becomes a way of life, life becomes a form of meditation, right? So we actually can start noticing patterns, really interesting patterns. I just had a session with a client earlier today where she's noticing that when something happens around her house unexpectedly, it's very interesting meditative ponderance, that when this particular thing happens, had to deal with her plumbing in her house, for some reason something really big in a good way happens in her life. So that's an interesting meditation. Now, is meditation easy to do? I would say yes and no. If you were to do more of the classical type of meditation, like sitting with your eyes closed, you may experience something called mental sweat, we're really used to like physical sweat, right? Like we're used to like, we'll go out for a jog or we'll hit the weights. We go to like a, fitness class and we will sweat, but there's actually something called mental sweat, and rightly so. Have you ever tried to tame what is called the monkey mind? For those of you who've tried to sit still and to tame your thoughts, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. It is not easy. Yet, once you're able to really tame your monkey mind, it is all worth it as well. Once you get the hang of it, it gets easier, and the more consistently you do it, like anything else, you just get more skilled at doing it. So in my experience, meditation can be this really profound, and I'm talking about really profound, maybe another video I'll share with you the profound ideas that come to me and very enlightening experiences that come to me when I'm really present with the meditation. When I'm really into it, I get the most amazing experiences from it. And a lot of answers are actually given to me. Now, who gives me these answers? Well, we can get into that in another video as well. And then there are times when I'm in meditation where I'm just waiting for this meditation to be over because I have got stuff to do, and I actually feel very impatient. I have experienced difficulty with taming my impatient energy, and that's really what that's related to. I'm not really present in my body, and therefore my mind is really racing. So I get a bit anxious because I just want to get things done that day. But I will tell you that I do take the time to be quiet, and I do, even if I'm not really closing my eyes and putting on like my eye mask, even without the eye mask, I will get into like a meditative state, and I could do meditation like perfectly, classically, as you would typically think, or very imperfectly, like just on the fly. I will just take time, even at my desk here, and just be quiet with myself for a few minutes. So I do it as much as possible and as best as I can, because I've noticed that when I do it, I'm so much better in my day when I have meditated versus when I don't meditate. There is an ability to handle stress better and dealing with what life throws at you better when you meditate. There are also times when I feel called to meditate. You may have actually experienced this, where it's almost like there's a part of you, you can call it your higher self, that wants you to be quiet with yourself, to go within, that knows that meditation is one of the keys to moving ahead with manifestation. And that's why we want to meditate. If I feel stumped, or maybe you may have experienced this, if you feel stumped with something and maybe you try to solve the problem as best as you know how with your own level of thinking, I need to take this problem into a meditative state, and the answers will come. These are more of like inspired ideas. And in my humble opinion, meditation especially very important during these current modern times, and I will explain why in a bit. So some people believe that meditation is like this emptying of the mind, and the objective is to not think. And personally, this has not been my experience with how meditation was taught to me. It's not about removing thought. It's about having better control of the thoughts and quality of thought. And as you know, when you want to be a powerful manifester, you got to be very intentional with your thoughts, right? And also intentional with your emotions. You have to be very intentional with your vibration. So now that we've defined meditation and given examples of the types of meditative states that we can get into, I want to kind of pivot a little bit and talk about Napoleon Hill for a little bit. And if you're familiar with Napoleon Hill's work and his background, you know that he had taken over 20 years of his life to do study of the most successful people, 500 most successful people on the planet. And he compiled his studies into a book called Think and Grow Rich. And we discover that Napoleon Hill figured out what made the top 500 most successful people on the planet tick, so to speak. What they had all in common, and he laid out 13 key principles that the world's most successful people, the 1%, embody and live by. So these folks were not even consciously aware of what they did that made them the top echelon in society. They just kind of embodied it and lived by it. So in other words, they were consciously and very unconsciously doing certain things in a certain way. There was one particular habit, and I want to stress this. This is related to meditation. There's one particular habit that Napoleon Hill uncovered, and it was the habit of auto-suggestion. So those of you that have read the book, you know what I'm talking about. So what is auto-suggestion? Auto-suggestion is when a person creates an idea consciously in a conscious level of thinking. So you may want to refer to my other videos on the different levels of mind: conscious, subconscious, unconscious, and superconscious. Okay. So there's this thing called auto-suggestion Napoleon Hill had identified. This is what the most successful people do on the planet. And you take this conscious level of idea, it's very intentional, and you repetitively say this idea, right? They repetitively would say this idea to themselves for a reason. And the reason being is they wanted to impress this idea onto their subconscious mind. They want their subconscious mind to take hold of the idea. Now I want you to take note of what I'm going to say next. Why is this important? Because the subconscious mind is the connection to what we call universal mind. The subconscious mind is the gateway to the universal mind. So whatever is impressed on the subconscious mind, by law, this is through repetition. When I mean by law, and I want you to think of by law in capital letters, by law, we're talking about spiritual law. And the spiritual laws, you've heard me talk about this before, is mirrored in physical laws. So when these ideas become impressed upon the subconscious mind, these ideas will become physical reality by law. It is basically guaranteed. There's a little bit of caveat with this. I'm going to go into this in a little bit more. So we're talking about ideas, right? When they are nurtured, they will become physically manifested, right? Hence manifestation. So what was once an invisible thought is now a physical, visible reality. Because remember that everything in the universe is moving in and out of form. Okay? You may have caught me talk about this in my previous videos. And so Napoleon Hill is giving specific instructions on how to auto-suggest in Think and Grow Rich. He was focused on specifically an accumulation of, let's say, material wealth. But it doesn't have to be only that. And this is what he's instructed to do. You write a statement of what you want, like maybe it's a very specific amount, right, of accumulation of wealth. And then you'll write down what you were willing to do in exchange for, this is related to the spiritual law of sacrifice, right? What you were willing to do in exchange for receiving that manifestation. And in this situation would be money. Now, when we talk about the law of sacrifice, we're not talking about good, sacrificing good in your life. You're talking about you're willing to do something in exchange for that acquisition of value, for the universe to help you manifest that amount of money, so to speak. So you would affirm your faith also in this statement. And then he instructed, this is what's really key in relation to meditation. He instructed to say this statement during very specific times during the early morning when you first wake up, and also when you're about to go to sleep. And he also said you should say the statement during these times, but also you must feel that the statement was already true and that you would affirm your faith in this statement. So let's talk about the timing of the autosuggestion. Why is it significant? Because when we go to sleep, when we're about to go to sleep, like twilight, you know what I'm talking about, when you're just like nodding off in bed, and when you just about wake up, your brain waves are in a very specific state, and that is the alpha and theta brainwave. This is when your brain waves are slower, and therefore you're accessing your subconscious mind when your brain waves are slower. We also feel a lot more relaxed when our brain waves are slower. So there's a spoiler alert here. The more relaxed you are with anyone and at peace you are, this is for everyone, the more effective they become as a manifester. So you can imagine it's very difficult, or you're actually going to cause a lot of resistance in your manifestations if you're in a very stressed, heightened state. That is related to a brainwave called high beta. Very important to understand that, because if we're too logical, we go into high beta. But when we're more relaxed, we're more at peace, we're more alpha and theta states. Therefore, we are accessing the subconscious mind, okay? Which is the link to universal mind. So when we're in meditation, we also access more creative thinking and problem-solving type thinking, okay? Because we induce a different type of brainwave. When we look at the theta brainwave, these are associated with seeing with our mind's eye. So that's like associated with imagination. While gamma brainwaves are associated with intense focus. So when you have beta brainwaves, you heard me talk about this earlier, that makes us perk up and feel energized. They're very fast brainwaves. Their main purpose for beta brainwaves is associated with logical thinking, which is also very important. But when people are in high beta, which is very left brain thinking, very logical thinking, it also means that the person's mind is racing. So beta brainwave serves its purpose for completing tasks, but there is a warning with this brainwave, because if you stay in high beta, you're very prone to having nervous breakdowns, because being in that brainwave for long periods of time is not sustainable. So it's in my humble opinion that in today's modern world, because of how we are constantly being stimulated with all this programming, and just really think about like how many like streaming platforms there are and how many advertisements that we are being exposed to. We also have how much, program we're exposed to with internet and social media. We are really, really overstimulated basically 24/7. So we find a majority of people are overly stimulated in the high beta brainwave, which means they're cut off from the subconscious mind, which is the gateway to universal mind. I hope you're seeing where I'm going with this, right? Because we have to really address what's happening in our real everyday modern world right now. And we also have to adapt to that. And that is why I'm highly recommending meditate intentionally, so you can learn to slow down your brain waves. So if you think about today's modern world, people are connected to electronics while in bed, and as soon as they wake up, they're checking their phones. There are millions across the planet who are in chronic high beta, and in high beta, you're not accessing the subconscious mind. To access the deeper parts of your mind is key to manifestations. To slow down your brain waves is key to manifestations. We must understand and we must connect, right? The universal mind, which helps us orchestrate our manifestations, through our subconscious and unconscious mind. That is where we're truly manifesting, is unconscious and subconscious level of thinking. So what is the remedy for this pervasive high beta situation? It is meditation, intentionally slowing down the brain waves. In other words, to tame the monkey mind. Napoleon Hill, even way back in the early 1930s, uncovered how the subconscious mind is linked to something called universal mind. It could also be coined as infinite intelligence. And infinite intelligence is everywhere. It's not just in the universities. It's not in particular areas of the world. It is literally everywhere. You can access infinite mind underground, Even when you're in the sea diving, you can be in the highest stratosphere of the atmosphere, or on a mountaintop. You can access it. If you're an astronaut in space, infinite intelligence is everywhere. You could be on another planet and access infinite intelligence. This is why there are people in the world that would accomplish extraordinary things in very short periods of time. It is because, yes, they work hard and they're savvy, but it's also because whether they're doing it consciously or unconsciously, they know how to connect their subconscious mind and leverage this greater intelligence called universal mind or infinite intelligence. So let me just step back a little bit, right? Why is it during the 1930s, it was a very different type of society, why was it during that time, during Napoleon Hill's time, that autosuggestion worked? Well, it still does. But let's give it context though. It worked because of the timing of the autosuggestion. He recommended early morning when you just wake up and also when you're about to go to sleep. But remember, people had very different lifestyles back then, right? The real, it's not really about the timing per se. It's really because as we're about to go to sleep and we're about to wake up, we are in alpha and theta brainwave. The brain waves are slower. So accessing the subconscious level of mind, connecting with universal mind must be done with slower brain waves. So for you to intentionally slow down your brain waves, either you can follow the same thing. You can follow waking up very early and doing your autosuggestion, or doing it when you're about to go to sleep and do your autosuggestion. Either way, or just being in a meditative state and impressing your subconscious mind in that way. Either way, you're connecting with universal mind, and you will find that universal mind, this infinite intelligence, will conspire in your favor. And I will see you in the next video.